The conference room smelled like fear and burnt coffee. I'd been in this building for 12 years, but today it felt foreign, like someone had repainted the walls overnight and nobody told me. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar drone, but the sound grated against my nerves in a way it never had before. Jason sat at the head of the table. My son. 33 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, and he couldn't even look me in the eye. Emma perched next to him, her phone face down on the mahogany surface, manicured nails drumming a rhythm that set my teeth on edge. Mia occupied the far corner, arms crossed, her architect's portfolio leather-bound and pristine. My daughter hadn't said a word to me in the parking lot this morning, hadn't even nodded when I'd held the elevator door. I should have known then. Dad. Jason finally met my gaze. His jaw was tight, like he'd been practicing this speech in the mirror. We need to talk about your recent activities. I leaned back in my chair. The leather squeaked. My activities. We know you've been meeting with competitors. Emma's voice was smooth, practiced. She did PR for tech startups, knew how to deliver bad news like it was a gift. Multiple times over the past 2 months, we have documentation. I let the silence stretch. Through the window behind them, Boston sprawled under gray November clouds. I could see the construction site where my housing system was being implemented, cranes swinging loads of prefabricated components that I'd designed. My lifetime of work reduced to steel and concrete. This is your last day, Jason said. The words came out rehearsed but strained. We're terminating your contract effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Mia shifted in her seat. Still hadn't spoken. Just watched me with those cold eyes she'd inherited from her mother, my ex-wife, who died 3 years ago and left these kids with nothing but ambition and entitlement. I smiled. Couldn't help it. The irony was too perfect. You caught me, I said. Jason blinked. Emma's drumming stopped. Mia's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. I'm sorry? Jason leaned forward. I said you caught me. I stood up, buttoned my jacket. I've been meeting with people behind your backs, guilty as charged. The confusion on their faces was beautiful. They'd expected arguments, protests, maybe some dignified anger. Instead, I was agreeing with them, confessing. Emma recovered first. Well, at least you're being honest about it. Always am. I picked up my briefcase. Anything else you need from me, or can I go clean out my desk? Jason stood too, uncertain now. Security is waiting outside. Of course they are. The walk down the hallway was surreal. 2 security guards flanked me like I was a criminal, their footsteps echoing off the polished floors. Employees peered through office windows, whispered behind hands. Word traveled fast in this building. Henry Walsh, the old man who helped build this company, getting perp walked out the front door. My desk was already cleaned out. They'd done it before the meeting. Professional, efficient, thorough. Someone had even packed my coffee mug, the one Jason had given me for Father's Day 10 years ago, back when he still called me Dad instead of Henry. The cardboard box felt light in my hands. One of the guards cleared his throat. Sir, I need your badge. I unclipped it from my belt, handed it over. 12 years condensed into a plastic rectangle with a photo that made me look older than I felt. Phone 2. Company property. I pulled the iPhone from my pocket, but not before I saw the notification light blinking. One new message. I thumbed the screen before the guard could snatch it away. Patent filing accepted. Timestamp. 8:14 a.m. I handed him the phone, smiled again. All yours. Outside, the November air bit at my face. The parking lot stretched before me, my truck sitting in the far corner where I always parked it. A 2015 Ford F-150, paint faded, but the engine was solid. I'd rebuilt half of it myself in my garage. I loaded the box into the passenger seat, climbed behind the wheel, and sat there for a moment. The building loomed in my rearview mirror, glass and steel and ambition. My kids were up there somewhere, probably congratulating themselves. Probably already on the phone with whatever construction conglomerate they'd lined up to buy my system. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd caught me colluding with competitors, forced me out before I could do any damage. They had no idea what they'd actually done. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The truck's heater took a minute to kick in, but when it did, warm air flooded the cab. My phone, my personal phone, the one they didn't know about, buzzed in my jacket pocket. Lila's text was brief. "All set?" I typed back one-handed while waiting at the stoplight. "Just left." They took the bait perfectly. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You're sure about this?" The light turned green. I accelerated through the intersection, watching the office building shrink in my mirrors. "Completely sure," I texted at the next light. "They want to play corporate games? Fine, but they forgot who taught them how to build things in the first place." My house sat on 3 acres outside the city, a 40-minute drive on a good day. I'd bought the property 20 years ago when land was cheap, and nobody wanted to live this far out. Now developers circled like vultures, offering obscene amounts of money for what they saw as prime real estate. I saw it as home. The workshop behind the house was my sanctuary. 50 years of tools hung on pegboards, organized by type and size. Table saw in the corner, lathe against the far wall, workbenches scarred from decades of projects. The smell of sawdust and machine oil had seeped into the wood itself. I set the cardboard box on the main workbench and stared at it. My entire career, reduced to a coffee mug and a few family photos I'd kept in my desk drawer. There was a picture of Jason at his college graduation, back when he still thought I hung the moon. Another of Mia holding her architecture degree, pride radiating from her smile. Emma wasn't in any of them. She'd married Jason 5 years ago, after he'd already started climbing the corporate ladder. I should have seen it coming then. The way she looked at money, at status, at everything like it was a transaction waiting to happen. My personal phone rang. Not Lila this time, a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Walsh?" A woman's voice, professional. "This is Jennifer from Patterson Legal. Your documents are ready for pickup whenever you're available. I'll be there tomorrow morning." "Perfect. And Mr. Walsh? Congratulations on the patent. It's an impressive piece of work." I thanked her and hung up. Through the workshop window, I could see the main house, dark and empty. I'd lived alone since the divorce, gotten used to the silence. Some nights, it felt peaceful. Other nights, it felt like a preview of how I'd die. Alone, forgotten, with nothing but tools and memories for company. My kids had promised they'd visit more after their mother died. They'd promised a lot of things. I pulled out the bottom drawer of my main workbench. Underneath a layer of sandpaper and spare blades was a folder thick with documents. I'd labeled it months ago, back when I first started suspecting something was wrong. Contingency blueprint. Inside were copies of emails, text messages, financial records. Not stolen. I'd learned a long time ago that paper trails existed for a reason, and if you were patient enough, people would hand you the evidence you needed. Jason had been sloppy with his correspondence. Mia had been arrogant, assuming I didn't understand the technical aspects of her architectural work. Emma had been the most careful, but even she'd left traces. Together, they painted a picture. My kids wanted my housing system. They wanted it badly enough to force me out of the company, badly enough to coordinate my termination like a military operation, badly enough to start the paperwork selling it to Meridian Construction Group before they'd even fired me. They'd underestimated 2 things. First, they'd underestimated how much I actually knew about their plan. I'd seen the memos. I'd overheard the phone calls. I'd watched Jason practice his termination speech in his office through the glass walls he thought made him look important. Second, they'd underestimated what those competitor meetings were really about. I spread the documents across the workbench. patent applications, licensing agreements, cease and desist templates. Lila Morrow had been invaluable, connecting me with the right lawyers, helping me navigate the Byzantine process of protecting intellectual property that I'd been stupid enough to develop under a company umbrella. But I'd been smart enough to file the core system patents under my own name first. That was the thing about kids these days. They thought everything was digital, everything was fast, everything happened in the cloud. They'd forgotten that the law still ran on paper, still required signatures and timestamps and original documents filed in person with government offices that closed at 4:30. While they'd been planning my corporate execution, I'd been filing patents. While they'd been scheduling meetings with Meridian, I'd been establishing legal ownership of every single component that made my housing system work. They'd fired me at 9:15 this morning. The patent office had accepted my final filing at 8:14. 61 minutes before my termination was official, I'd locked down ownership of the one thing they needed to make their deal work. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lila. "Heard from their legal team yet?" "Not yet," I typed back. "Give them another day. They need to figure out what they've lost first." I folded the documents back into the folder, returned it to the drawer. The workshop suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. I needed air, needed to think, needed to plan the next move. Outside, the November wind stripped the last leaves from the oak trees. My property line extended to the tree line beyond, marking the edge of civilization. Past, that was state forest, miles of hiking trails I'd walked hundreds of times over the years. I'd been walking those trails the first time Jason told me he wanted to join the company. He'd been 26, fresh from business school, full of ideas about disruption and innovation and paradigm shifts. I'd been proud. My son wanted to work with me, wanted to learn the business, wanted to build something together. That lasted about 6 months. Then he started talking about my outdated methods, about how I was holding the company back, about how we needed to pivot to a more aggressive growth strategy. I'd stepped aside, let him have more control, thought maybe he was right, maybe I was too old-fashioned, maybe the world had passed me by. Mia joined a year later. She had the technical credentials I lacked, the formal education that made clients trust her. I'd been happy to have her expertise, happy to see my daughter applying her architecture degree to real projects. She lasted 3 months before she started complaining that I was micromanaging, that I didn't respect her professional judgment, that I needed to let the next generation take the lead. I'd stepped aside again. Emma came with Jason's engagement ring, and suddenly everything changed. She had connections, she said. She knew people. She could get us contracts with major developers, get our system in front of decision-makers who could transform the business. She did exactly that, and then they'd decided they didn't need me anymore. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, Jason's personal cell. I let it ring. 4 times, 5, 6. Voicemail picked up. "Dad, it's Jason. Listen, I know today was difficult, but I think we need to talk about the transition. There are some details about your retirement package we need to discuss. Call me back when you get this." Retirement package. Like I was some employee they were laying off with 2 weeks severance and a gold watch. Like I hadn't built that company from nothing, hadn't spent 12 years developing the system they were about to sell. I deleted the voicemail without responding. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. Inside the workshop, the shadows grew long across the workbenches. I turned on the overhead lights, fluorescent tubes flickering to life with a familiar electric hum. Time to build something new. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The next 72 hours passed in a strange blur of normalcy and anticipation. I kept my routine, morning coffee, breakfast at the diner down the road, afternoons in the workshop. To anyone watching, I was just a recently retired carpenter settling into his new life of leisure. nobody was watching. That was their first mistake. I spent those 3 days organizing, not just documents and legal papers, but tools, materials, every component of the workshop that had accumulated over decades. If this was going to work, I needed everything in its place. Every nail, every screw, every measurement had to be exact. That's what they'd never understood. Jason thought business was about spreadsheets and quarterly projections. Mia thought architecture was about aesthetics and theoretical design. Emma thought everything was about image and perception. They'd all forgotten the fundamental truth I'd learned 50 years ago when my father first put a hammer in my hand. Details matter. Miss one measurement, one angle, one crucial piece, and the whole structure collapses. I was planning a collapse. Lila called on the second day. The documents are filed. Everything's registered and time-stamped. You're bulletproof legally. Legally, I repeated. But they'll fight it. Of course they will. That's where it gets interesting. I could hear the smile in her voice. Lila loved this kind of thing, the strategy, the chess match of corporate warfare. She'd made a career out of helping inventors protect their work from companies trying to steal it. When do you want to move? After they make contact. I want them to realize what they've lost before we show them how much worse it's going to get. You're enjoying this, shouldn't I? They tried to throw me away like a used hammer. Time they learned what happens when you don't maintain your tools. She laughed, sharp and quick. I'll stand by. Call me when you're ready to proceed. The call came on the third day, right on schedule. Not Jason this time, his lawyer. A man named Whitmore from some downtown firm with 3 names and probably 50 partners. Mr. Walsh, I represent Walsh Consulting in a matter regarding intellectual property you've claimed ownership of. I was in the workshop, using a plane to smooth down a piece of oak. The blade made satisfying curls of wood that fell away like petals. I haven't claimed anything. I filed patents for my own work. Work that was developed under the umbrella of Walsh Consulting, using company resources and time. Work that I started developing 15 years before Walsh Consulting existed. I set down the plane. Work that I continued developing on my own time, in my own workshop, using my own materials. Mr. Walsh, I don't think you understand the seriousness of this situation. Oh, I understand perfectly. Your clients fired me and are now trying to sell my work to Meridian. Except they can't, because they don't own it. I do. Silence on the other end. I could imagine Whitmore looking at whatever documents Jason had given him, realizing the problem. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting, he said finally. I'm sure we can come to some mutually beneficial arrangement. I'm sure we can't, but feel free to send me whatever you'd like me to review. You have my address. I hung up before he could respond. Through the workshop window, I saw a car pulling up my driveway. Expensive, sleek, black. Not Whitmore. Too soon for him to make a personal visit. The door opened and Jason stepped out, alone this time. No Emma, no Mia. Just my son in his $1,000 suit, looking around my property like he was assessing its value. I met him at the workshop door. Dad? He'd reverted to the old title. Interesting. I tried calling. I know. Can we talk? I stepped aside, let him enter. He looked around the workshop like he'd never seen it before, even though he'd spent half his childhood here. His gaze lingered on the pegboards, the tool organization, the workbenches arranged in a precise geometric pattern. I forgot how organized you keep this place, he said. Everything has its spot. If it doesn't, you lose it when you need it. He turned to face me. About the other day. You mean when you fired me? It wasn't personal. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Jason, firing your father is pretty much the definition of personal. It was a business decision. You were meeting with competitors, I was meeting with patent lawyers. I pulled out my phone, showed him the timestamps. Every single meeting you thought was corporate espionage was actually me protecting my own work. Work you were planning to sell. His face went pale. How did I know? I've been watching you for 6 months. Watched you court Meridian, watched you prepare the sale documents, watched you coordinate with Mia and Emma to force me out at exactly the right moment. I pocketed the phone. You were thorough. I'll give you that. But you made one critical error. What's that? You assumed I was too stupid to see it coming. Jason's jaw tightened. There it was. The anger he'd been suppressing. The arrogance that had been growing for years. You're out of the company, Dad. You don't have any leverage. No? Then why are you here? Because I'm trying to do the right thing. We can still make this work. Transfer the patents to Walsh Consulting. We'll give you a percentage of the Meridian deal. Everyone wins. What percentage? 10%. That's more than fair. I walked to the workbench, picked up a chisel. The handle was smooth from decades of use, the blade sharp enough to shave wood to translucent thinness. You know what this cost me? $20 at a hardware store in 1987. I've used it on probably 500 projects. It's made me maybe $50,000 in its lifetime. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Dad, I don't see what that has to... The patents you want? They're worth $10 million minimum, probably closer to 20 if Meridian develops them properly, and you're offering me 10%. I set down the chisel. Get out of my workshop. Dad, out, before I throw you out. He left without another word. I watched his car disappear down the driveway, taillights flashing through the November gloom. My phone buzzed immediately. Lila. I'm guessing that didn't go well? He offered me 10%. Generous. Her sarcasm was thick enough to spread with a knife. Ready for phase 2? I looked around the workshop. Everything in its place. Every tool accounted for. Every measurement precise. Send the cease and desist, I said. All of them. Jason, Mia, Emma, Walsh Consulting, Meridian, and anyone else who's touched my system without permission. This is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. I'm just making sure everyone sees it. The documents arrived at Walsh Consulting's headquarters at 9 a.m. the next morning, delivered by courier and requiring signature. Lila had crafted them beautifully. 20 pages of dense legal language that boiled down to one simple message: stop everything or face legal consequences that would bankrupt the company. Jason called at 9:30. I didn't answer. Mia called at 10. I didn't answer. Emma called at 10:15, 10:45, and 11:20. I didn't answer any of them. Whitmore called at noon. Mr. Walsh, this is excessive. You're bringing everything to a halt over what amounts to a family dispute. It's not a family dispute. It's intellectual property theft. Nobody stole anything. Then why did you file the Meridian paperwork before you fired me? Why did Emma prepare a press release announcing my retirement 2 weeks before it happened? Why did Mia transfer design documents to an offshore server the night before my termination? Another silence. Longer this time. We can prove all of it, I continued. Every email, every file transfer, every phone call. You coordinated a scheme to steal my work and cut me out of the proceeds. That's not a family dispute. That's fraud. Mr. Walsh, I strongly advise you to retain legal counsel before... I hung up. The workshop felt different now. Still organized, still precise, but charged with something new. Energy, maybe. Purpose. For the first time in months, I felt like I was building something instead of watching my life get dismantled piece by piece. Lila arrived that evening with a briefcase full of documents. She spread them across my kitchen table, pointing out sections with a pen. This is the timeline. This is the evidence. This is what we can prove in court. She looked up at me. Henry, they're going to fight this with everything they have. Are you sure you want to go through with it? I thought about Jason's face in the workshop. The entitlement. The assumption that I'd just roll over and accept whatever scraps they threw my way. I've never been more sure of anything. Good, she smiled. Because I've been waiting my entire career to take down corporate thieves who think they're untouchable. Your kids? They're about to learn a very expensive lesson. We worked until midnight, planning the next stages. It wasn't enough to stop the Meridian deal. That was just the beginning. We needed to dismantle everything they'd built on my foundation, piece by piece, until they understood exactly what they'd lost. The blueprint was elegant in its simplicity. First, the cease and desist halted all immediate activity. Then, once they tried to work around it, we'd hit them with licensing violations. Every project that used my system without permission, every design that incorporated my patents without authorization, every single instance where they'd treated my work as their own, it would take months, maybe years. But I had time. They didn't. Lila left around 1 a.m. I stood in the driveway, watching her taillights disappear. The November night was cold and clear, stars visible despite the light pollution from the city. My breath formed clouds in the air. My phone buzzed. A text from Jason. "Please, we need to talk. This is destroying the company." I typed back, "You destroyed it when you decided I was disposable." Then I turned off my phone and went inside. Rebecca Thornton arrived at my workshop at 9 a.m. exactly. Mid-40s, sharp-dressed in a way that suggested she took business seriously. She shook my hand with a grip that could crush walnuts. "Mr. Walsh, thank you for seeing me. Call me Henry. Coffee? Please." We sat at my workbench, mugs of coffee steaming between us. She looked around the workshop with genuine interest, taking in the organized tools, the half-finished projects, the blueprints pinned to the walls. "This is where you developed the system?" she asked. "Most of it. The core concepts came from decades of construction work, but the actual design happened here. It's impressive, both the space and the work." She pulled out a tablet. "I've reviewed your patents thoroughly. The system is brilliant, modular, adaptable, cost-effective. Exactly what we need for our development plans. But Walsh Consulting still has projects in progress using the system. If we license from you, we inherit potential liability from their misuse. That concerns our legal team." I smiled. "What if I told you Walsh Consulting won't be a concern much longer?" "How much longer?" "Weeks. Maybe days. They're hemorrhaging clients, facing lawsuits, drowning in bad press. By the time you're ready to implement the system, they'll be gone." She studied me for a long moment. "You planned this. They stole from me. I'm taking back what's mine. By destroying them in the process. By holding them accountable. There's a difference." She sipped her coffee, considering. "Our board wants guarantees. Clean title to the patents, no lingering legal issues, full indemnification. You'll have all of that. Once Walsh Consulting collapses, there won't be any competing claims. You'll license directly from me with clear contracts and proper compensation." Compensation. Let's talk numbers. We negotiated for 2 hours. Rebecca was sharp, pushed hard on terms and percentages. But I'd spent months preparing for this conversation, knew exactly what the system was worth and what I'd accept. By 11 a.m., we had a framework, not a final contract that would take lawyers and weeks of drafting, but an agreement in principle. Meridian would license the system for an upfront payment and ongoing royalties. The numbers made my head spin. More money than I'd made in my entire career. More money than Walsh Consulting would have given me if they'd succeeded. "One condition," Rebecca said as we shook hands. "We announce this immediately. Press release, public filing, everything. We want the market to know Meridian has secured the system legitimately. That works for me. It's going to destroy Walsh Consulting's remaining credibility. You understand that?" "I'm counting on it." She smiled, not quite friendly, but respectful. "Remind me never to cross you, Henry." After she left, I sat in the workshop for a long time. The deal was done, or as done as it could be without final signatures. All that remained was watching it play out. My phone buzzed. "Lila. Tell me you didn't just license to Meridian. I just licensed to Meridian. Henry, that's... She paused. Actually, that's brilliant. Walsh Consulting loses their primary buyer and you get paid directly, plus it establishes clear ownership precedent. That was the idea. When do they announce? This afternoon. Oh, this is going to be good. I'll make popcorn. The announcement came at 3 p.m. Meridian's press release was professional and devastating. Meridian Construction Group is pleased to announce a licensing agreement with Henry Walsh for exclusive use of the Walsh modular housing system. This agreement provides clear legal authorization and represents Meridian's commitment to ethical business practices. The last line was the knife twist. This agreement supersedes any prior discussions with Walsh Consulting regarding the system. Walsh Consulting's stock dropped another 20% within an hour. News outlets picked up the story, connecting it to the ongoing patent scandal. By evening, financial analysts were predicting bankruptcy within the quarter. Jason called at 6. I didn't answer. Emma called at 7. I didn't answer. Mia called at 8. I answered. You sold it to them. Her voice was flat, emotionless. You sold our future to Meridian. It was never yours to sell. We built the company around that system. We spent years developing relationships with clients, with contractors, with suppliers, and you just gave it all to Meridian. I licensed my patented system to a legitimate buyer. What you built was unauthorized use of my work. You know what I mean. You're not just taking back your patents. You're destroying everything we created. I leaned back in my chair. The workshop was dark except for the lamp over the workbench, casting long shadows across the walls. What you created was built on theft. You don't get to keep things you stole just because you worked hard after stealing them. We're family. You fired me. You planned it for months. You laughed about it. You called me obsolete. My voice stayed level, controlled. You destroyed the family. I'm just cleaning up what's left. There has to be something left to clean up, some way to salvage this. There isn't. Walsh Consulting is finished. You're finished. That's what happens when you betray the person who built your foundation. Silence on the line. Then, quietly, I hate you. I know. But you'll hate yourself more once you realize you did this to yourselves. I hung up. That night, I drove into the city. Not to Walsh Consulting's building. I was done inspecting their failure. Instead, I went to a bar I used to frequent years ago, back when I still thought my kids were going to carry on my legacy. The bartender recognized me, smiled. Henry Walsh, haven't seen you in ages. Heard you retired. Not quite. I ordered whiskey, neat. But close enough. What are you celebrating? I thought about that. About Rebecca Thornton's handshake, about the licensing deal, about Walsh Consulting's cratering stock price, about my kids' desperate phone calls. Justice, I said finally. The whiskey tasted like victory, bitter, sharp, with a burn that lingered. I stayed at the bar until midnight, nursing drinks and watching sports highlights on the TV above the bottles. Other patrons came and went, some recognizing me, most not. A few asked about the news stories. I deflected, stayed vague, didn't elaborate. The drive home was careful. I'd had enough to feel it, but not enough to be dangerous. The November night was cold and clear, stars visible despite the light pollution. My house sat dark on its 3 acres, the workshop a deeper shadow behind it. I should have felt satisfied, should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow, not regret. I didn't regret holding them accountable. But there was something else. An emptiness where my family used to be. A space that used to hold Jason's phone calls and Mia's visits and the possibility of reconciliation. That space was gone now, burned away by cease and desist orders and patent violations and licensing deals with their competitors. I'd won. But winning felt a lot like losing. My phone buzzed as I was unlocking the workshop door. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Mr. Walsh? A man's voice, unfamiliar. This is David Chen from... I hung up, No more unknown numbers, no more surprise calls. I was done being accessible to people who wanted something from me. Inside the workshop, I turned on all the lights, made the space bright, drove away the shadows, pulled out a project I'd been neglecting, a custom dining table commissioned months ago. The client had been patient, understanding about the delays. Time to finish something. I worked until 3 a.m., losing myself in the rhythm of sanding and staining. The wood grain emerged under my hands, patterns that had been hidden beneath rough surfaces. By the time I finished, the table glowed in the workshop light, rich and warm. One thing completed, one thing finished properly, with care and precision. Unlike my family, unlike Walsh Consulting, unlike everything else that had burned down over the past month. But at least, it was something. I went to bed as dawn approached, slept without dreams, and woke at noon to 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Whitmore. "Mr. Walsh, we need to discuss settlement terms. Please call me back at your earliest convenience." Settlement. Finally. I didn't call back. Not yet. Let them sweat a little longer. Let them understand that I was in control now, that I set the timeline, that they moved when I allowed them to move. Lila called it too. They're preparing for bankruptcy. Chapter 11 likely filing next week. Faster than I expected. Meridian announcement accelerated everything. Clients fled, investors panicked, board members are resigning. It's a complete collapse. What happens to Jason? Probably forced resignation. Mia too. Emma's PR firm is distancing itself from the scandal. She paused. "Henry, you did it. You completely dismantled them." "Yeah, you don't sound happy about it." I looked around the workshop. Everything in its place. Everything organized. Everything except me. I'm not unhappy, I'm just done. Done? We still have the final settlement to negotiate. Compensation for damages, official transfer of any remaining claims. Handle it. Whatever terms you think are fair. Henry, I trust you. Make sure I get what I'm owed. Make sure they can't come back at me legally and close this out. I don't want to talk to them anymore. Any of them. After we hung up, I sat in the silence. The workshop had always been my sanctuary, but now it felt like a bunker, a place to hide from the wreckage I'd created. No, not created, exposed. They'd built their empire on sand, on stolen work, and betrayed trust. I'd just shown everyone what happened when the tide came in. My phone buzzed. Text from Jason. "Please, just talk to me." I deleted it without responding. Then I turned off my phone, went back to the dining table, and started applying the final finish coat. If I couldn't fix what I'd lost, at least I could create something beautiful from what remained. The bankruptcy filing came the following Tuesday. Walsh Consulting, once valued at over $30 million, declaring Chapter 11 with assets less than liabilities. The news made business headlines, spawned analysis pieces, generated discussions about intellectual property theft and family betrayal. I ignored all of it. Lila handled the settlement negotiations. She called occasionally with updates, asset liquidation plans, creditor claims, final dissolution timelines. I listened, approved what needed approving, and went back to work in the workshop. 3 weeks after the Meridian announcement, my phone rang with a number I recognized but hadn't seen in years. My ex-wife's sister, Julia. "Henry? It's Julia." "I know. Have you talked to the kids?" "No. They're struggling. Jason's been removed as COO. Mia's lost her architecture license pending an ethics review. Emma's PR firm dropped her." "I know all that. And you're okay with it?" I set down the chisel I'd been sharpening. "They stole from me, Julia. They planned my firing for months. They tried to sell my life's work without permission. What part of that should make me sympathetic? They're your children. They were my children. Now they're just people who made terrible choices and are facing consequences. That's cold. That's justice." She sighed. long and tired. Henry, I'm not saying what they did was right, but this level of revenge, this is destroying them. They destroyed themselves. I just refuse to let them profit from it. Where does it end? When are you satisfied? I thought about that. When would I be satisfied? When Walsh Consulting was gone completely, when Jason lost everything, when Mia's career was ruined beyond repair, when Emma was unemployable? Was I satisfied now? I don't know, I said honestly. But it's not about satisfaction anymore. It's about boundaries, about showing them that you can't just erase people when they're inconvenient. They know that now. Trust me, they know. Good. After Julia hung up, I sat in the workshop as November gave way to December. The temperature dropped, first snow dusting the ground. I installed a space heater, kept working through projects that had accumulated over the months of legal warfare. Lila called less frequently. The settlement negotiations wound down. Walsh Consulting's assets were liquidated, with most going to creditors. I received compensation for unauthorized patent use, a significant sum, but less than what Meridian was paying for the license. The legal closure felt anticlimactic. No dramatic courtroom confrontation, no public apology, just signatures on documents and wire transfers between accounts. Jason, Mia, and Emma vanished from my life. No calls, no messages, no attempts at reconciliation. I'd drawn a line, and they'd stayed on their side of it. I told myself that was what I wanted. The dining table client came to pick up his commission in mid-December. He walked around it, running his hands over the surface, examining the joinery and finish. Beautiful work, Henry. Worth the wait. Sorry about the delay. I read about what happened, the patent scandal and everything. He looked at me. Must have been difficult. It was necessary. Family business is always complicated. I helped him load the table into his truck, secured it with blankets and straps. As he drove away, I stood in the driveway watching the taillights disappear. One project finished. One client satisfied. One piece of normalcy in months of chaos. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Walsh, this is Gregory from the patent office. I wanted to follow up on your recent filings. What about them? We've received inquiries from several entities interested in licensing. I wanted to confirm you're the primary contact for commercial arrangements. I am. Direct any inquiries to my patent attorney, Lila Morrow. Will do. And Mr. Walsh, congratulations. Your system is getting significant attention. The Meridian implementation is being watched closely by the industry. After he hung up, I realized something. I'd won not just the legal battle, but the professional one. My system was validated. My expertise was recognized. After years of being dismissed as obsolete, I'd proven I was anything but. Walsh Consulting might be gone, but the Walsh modular housing system was just beginning. December passed in a blur of work and solitude. I took on new commissions, small projects that kept my hands busy, a bookshelf here, a cabinet there, custom furniture for people who appreciated craftsmanship. The workshop became my entire world. I didn't go to bars anymore, didn't socialize, didn't do anything except work. Some nights I slept on the couch in the corner rather than walking back to the house. Lila noticed. She showed up one evening with Chinese takeout and an expression that said she wasn't taking no for an answer. You're becoming a hermit, she said, unpacking containers on the workbench. I'm busy. You're hiding. She pushed fried rice toward me. Henry, you won. Completely, thoroughly won. Walsh Consulting is gone, your patents are secure, Meridian is implementing your system successfully, you've been vindicated in every possible way. So? So why are you living in a workshop eating canned soup? I picked at the rice. Because it's simpler. Because you feel guilty. I looked up at her. I don't feel guilty. They deserved what they got. I didn't say they didn't deserve it. I said you feel guilty about being the one who gave it to them. That's ridiculous. Is it? You destroyed your children's careers, systematically, thoroughly, ruthlessly. Yes, they betrayed you first. Yes, they stole from you. Yes, they deserved consequences. But Henry, you didn't just make them pay, you crushed them. I set down the rice. What was I supposed to do? Let them steal from me? Let them profit from betrayal? No. But there's a spectrum between let them get away with it and destroy them completely. You went all the way to one end. Because they went all the way to the other end. They didn't just fire me. They planned it for months. They laughed about it. They called me obsolete. And now they're unemployed, unmarketable, and possibly facing criminal charges depending on how the fraud investigation goes. You've proven your point, multiple times over. I stood up, paced the workshop. You think I should have stopped earlier? I think you should consider whether this is really justice or just revenge with better paperwork. There's a difference? Sometimes. Not always. She stood too, faced me. Henry, I helped you do this. I filed every document, negotiated every agreement, gave you the legal tools to dismantle them. I don't regret it. But I'm watching you live in a workshop because you can't face your own house, and I'm wondering if maybe we went too far. You said they deserved consequences. They did. They do. But consequences don't have to mean annihilation. She grabbed her coat. Think about that. Think about whether this outcome actually makes you feel better or if you're just numb from the fight. After she left, I stood in the workshop surrounded by tools and unfinished projects. The space heater hummed in the corner. Outside, December snow fell in quiet accumulation. Was I numb, or satisfied, or guilty? I didn't know anymore. What I did know, Jason was 33, unemployed and blacklisted in his industry. Mia was 28, her architecture license suspended, her career finished before it really started. Emma's PR business was destroyed by association. I'd done that. Me. Not abstractly, not through impersonal legal processes, but through deliberate, calculated destruction. They'd tried to erase me. I'd erased them back. Eye for an eye leaves everyone blind, some saying went. I turned off the workshop lights, walked back to the house, first time in weeks. The building felt foreign, like I'd been gone for years instead of weeks. Inside, dust-covered surfaces, mail accumulated on the kitchen counter. The house had the stale air of abandonment. I spent the next few hours cleaning, opening windows despite the cold, letting fresh air cycle through rooms I'd been avoiding. In my bedroom, I found a photo on the nightstand. Old, from Jason's college graduation. He was smiling, arm around my shoulders, looking at me like I was his hero. I'd been his hero once, before he learned that heroes get old, get tired, get in the way of ambition. I put the photo face down in a drawer, couldn't look at it anymore. That night, I dreamed of the workshop, but in the dream, it was on fire. Tools melting, blueprints burning, everything I'd built turning to ash. I tried to save things, but my hands passed through them like smoke. I woke at 3 a.m., sweat-soaked and gasping. Just a dream, but it felt like a warning. The next day, I called Lila. Tell me the truth. Did we go too far? Long silence. Then, I don't know. Legally, no. Morally, that's not my department. But if you had to guess, Henry, I've spent my career protecting inventors from theft. I've seen families torn apart, lives ruined, decades of work stolen. What your kids did? It's textbook betrayal. They deserve to be stopped. That's not what I asked. Another silence. If you're asking whether complete destruction was necessary, then no, probably not. You could have stopped after the cease and desist, could have negotiated a settlement that gave you ownership and compensation without destroying their company, but you didn't. You went for total victory. Because they wouldn't have learned otherwise. Maybe. Or maybe you were just angry and wanted them to hurt like you hurt. Both can be true. Yeah, they can. I thanked her and hung up. Sat in the workshop. I'd returned there after my night in the house and thought about what she'd said. Complete destruction hadn't been necessary, but it had been satisfying. Watching them scramble, watching them fail, watching them understand what they'd done. That satisfaction was the problem. Because it didn't feel like justice anymore. It felt like something colder, something meaner. It felt like revenge, and revenge, no matter how justified, left scars on everyone involved, including the person doing it. January came cold and unforgiving. The workshop's space heater struggled against the New England winter, but I kept working. New commissions arrived through word of mouth. People who'd heard about the dining table, about the custom cabinets, about Henry Walsh, who did meticulous work with old-school techniques. The work kept me sane, kept me from thinking too much about what I'd done. Meridian's first project using my system broke ground in mid-January. Rebecca Thornton invited me to the ceremony. Photo opportunity, press coverage, celebration of innovation. I declined. Watching them use my system should have felt like victory, but I couldn't muster the enthusiasm. Lila called about something else entirely. Walsh Consulting's final asset liquidation is next week. The building, equipment, intellectual property that wasn't yours. You're entitled to attend if you want. Why would I want that? Closure, maybe? I have closure. They're gone. Are they? Because you're still living in your workshop like a hermit. I've been taking commissions. I'm working. You're hiding. There's a difference. I hung up without responding. She wasn't wrong, but I didn't need to hear it. The asset liquidation happened without me. I got an email summary afterward. Everything sold, debts mostly paid, remaining obligations handled through bankruptcy court. Walsh Consulting ceased to exist officially on January 23rd. My children's company, built on my foundation and my stolen work, was gone. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. February brought unexpected contact. A letter, not an email or phone call. Handwritten envelope, no return address. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Jason's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere, the careful letters, the slight right slant, the way he crossed his T's. I almost didn't read it. Almost burned it in the workshop's wood stove. But my hands opened the envelope before my brain could stop them. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to respond to this. But I need to say some things. An email felt wrong. You always said important words deserved good paper. You were right about everything. We stole from you. We planned your firing. We treated you like you were disposable. We betrayed you in every way that matters. I've spent the past 3 months understanding why, not excusing it. There's no excuse, but understanding how I became the person who could do that to his own father. I wanted to be somebody, not just successful, somebody important, somebody people talked about. Emma pushed that need, encouraged it, made it seem like ambition was virtue. Mia was already there, already hungry for recognition. Together, we convinced ourselves that you were holding us back, that your methods were outdated, that you didn't understand modern business, that we needed to cut you loose to reach our potential. We were wrong, about all of it. Your methods worked because they were careful. Your business approach succeeded because it valued people over profit. Your system was brilliant, not despite its simplicity, but because of it. We took all that and tried to commoditize it, turn it into product, into revenue, into growth metrics. We destroyed what made it special, and we destroyed our family in the process. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to stop the legal consequences. We earned everyone. I'm just saying I understand now. I understand what we did, why it was wrong, and what we lost. Mia lost her architecture license permanently. The ethics board ruled that her modifications to your system showed negligent disregard for safety. She's working retail now. Last I heard, she's managing a clothing store in Portland. Emma and I separated. She blamed me for listening to you, for not fighting harder, for letting you destroy us. I blamed her for pushing me to betray you in the first place. Neither of us was wrong. I'm doing warehouse work, loading trucks, moving boxes. It's honest work, pays enough to cover a studio apartment and groceries. Some days I'm grateful for it. Other days I remember when I was a COO and wonder how I fell so far. But I know how. I fell by pushing down the person who built the foundation I stood on. You taught me to build things carefully, to measure twice and cut once, to respect materials and trust good tools. I forgot all that. I'm trying to remember. This isn't an attempt at reconciliation. I know that's impossible. This is just acknowledgement. You were right. We were wrong. You won because you deserved to win. I'm sorry for everything. Jason. I read the letter 3 times. Sitting in the workshop, winter lights slanting through the windows, my hands shaking slightly. He'd lost everything. Mia too. Emma gone. Their careers destroyed. Living lives they'd never imagined they'd have to live. Because of me. No. Because of them. Because they'd made choices, taken actions, betrayed trust. I'd just held them accountable. But accountability and destruction weren't the same thing. I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, stared at it for a long time. Some part of me, the father part I'd tried to suppress, wanted to respond, wanted to reach out, offer some kind of olive branch. Not reconciliation exactly, but acknowledgement that he'd taken responsibility. The rest of me remembered sitting in that conference room, listening to him fire me, remembered termination plan and Emma's press releases and Mia's offshore file transfers. I burned the letter in the wood stove, watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash, but I couldn't burn the words. They stayed with me, echoing through the workshop. I understand what we lost. March brought the first thaw. The workshop's space heater got less use. I opened windows, let fresh air replace the stale winter atmosphere. Lila visited again, this time without Chinese takeout. Just her and her briefcase, and an expression that said she had news. Meridian's first project is ahead of schedule. Your system is performing better than projected. They're talking about expanding the licensing agreement. Good. You should sound more excited. This is what we fought for. I set down the plane I'd been using. I am excited, just tired. You're not tired, you're depressed. I'm fine. Henry. She sat on the workbench. I've known you for 2 years now. You're not fine. You haven't been fine since you burned Jason's letter. How did you? I know you. I knew you'd burn it without reading it, or read it and burn it anyway. Either way, you destroyed the one attempt at communication they made. He didn't deserve a response. Maybe not, but you deserve to let go of this anger. It's eating you alive. I'm not angry. You're furious, constantly, at them for betraying you, at yourself for caring, at the whole situation for being complicated and messy when you wanted it to be simple and clear. I leaned against the opposite workbench. What am I supposed to do? Forgive them? Maybe, or at least forgive yourself for what you did to them. I don't need forgiveness. They stole from me. And you destroyed them for it. Completely, thoroughly, professionally destroyed them. Yes, they started it. Yes, they deserved consequences. But Henry, you went nuclear. And now, you're living with that choice. I can live with it. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're barely living at all. You're existing in this workshop, avoiding your own house, taking small commissions when you should be celebrating massive success. Success doesn't feel like success. Exactly. She stood. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This isn't what winning looks like. This is what revenge looks like after you achieve it and realize it didn't fix anything. After she left, I sat in the workshop as evening came. The March sunset painted the sky orange and purple through the windows. Tools hung on their pegboards, everything organized, everything in place. Everything except me. Was Lila right? Was this revenge, not justice? Had I gone too far? The questions circled like vultures, but I couldn't answer them. Because answering them meant admitting that maybe, I'd become the thing I'd accused my kids of being. Someone who hurt people to serve their own needs. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old photos, found one from 5 years ago, Jason, Mia, and me at a construction site. We were all wearing hard hats, all smiling, all proud of the project we'd completed together, before everything went wrong, before the ambition and betrayal and destruction. When we were still family. I deleted the photo. Had to. Couldn't keep looking at what we used to be when what we'd become was so far removed. My phone rang immediately after. Unknown number. Mr. Walsh? This is Detective Morrison with Boston PD. I'm calling about the Walsh Consulting fraud investigation. My stomach dropped. What about it? We've been reviewing the evidence your attorney provided. The emails, financial records, internal communications. There's enough here for criminal charges if you want to pursue them. Criminal charges. Jason in jail. Mia with a record. Emma prosecuted for conspiracy. Mr. Walsh, are you there? I'm here. Do you want to file charges? Did I? Did I want to see them in prison jumpsuits, facing criminal prosecution on top of everything else? The father part of me screamed no. The angry part screamed yes. The exhausted part just wanted it to end. No, I said finally. No charges. The civil penalties are enough. Are you sure? This is clear-cut fraud. They coordinated to steal intellectual property and fire you to cover it up. The DA would definitely prosecute. I'm sure. Let it go. Okay. If you change your mind within the next 6 months, the investigation will remain open. After that, statute of limitations makes it difficult. After he hung up, I sat in the darkening workshop and understood something. I'd drawn a line. Unconsciously maybe, but I'd drawn it. Civil destruction. Yes. Taking their careers, their company, their professional futures. Yes. But criminal prosecution? Prison time? That was too far. Even for me. Maybe that meant something. Maybe it meant I wasn't completely lost to revenge. Or maybe it just meant I was tired of fighting. Either way, I'd made a choice. No criminal charges. Just the professional ruin I'd already accomplished. It would have to be enough. Spring came slowly to New England. April brought rain and tentative flowers. The workshop warmed enough that I could work without the space heater. Projects accumulated, a hope chest, a jewelry box, custom shelving for a client's library. Good work, careful work. The kind of craftsmanship that reminded me why I'd chosen this life in the first place. Meridian's project finished ahead of schedule in May. Rebecca Thornton sent photos, modular housing units assembled perfectly, residents moving in, success by every metric. My system worked exactly as designed. You should visit, she wrote in the email. See your work implemented properly. The residents love it. I didn't visit, couldn't face the success, couldn't celebrate what I'd built when it was so tangled up with what I'd destroyed. Lila stopped pushing, stopped visiting with takeout and lectures. We talked business, licensing inquiries, patent renewals, financial matters, but she didn't ask about my emotional state anymore. Maybe she'd given up, or maybe she'd realized I needed to figure it out myself. Julia called again in June. Jason moved, took a job in Cleveland, warehouse management. He asked me to tell you. Why would I care? Because he's your son. He was my son. Now he's just someone I used to know. That's a sad way to live, Henry. It's the way I'm living. She sighed. Mia's in therapy, processing everything, the betrayal, the consequences, what she did and what happened because of it. Good for her. Emma left Boston entirely. Nobody knows where she went. Also good. Henry, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because they're moving on, processing, trying to rebuild, and you're still stuck in your workshop like the war is still happening. The war's over. I won. Did you? Because you don't sound like someone who won. After she hung up, I sat with that question. Did I win? Objectively, yes. I'd recovered my patents, destroyed the company that tried to steal them, secured a lucrative licensing deal, and established clear ownership rights that would protect my work for decades. But subjectively, sitting alone in a workshop, eating takeout for dinner, with no family and no friends except a patent attorney who thought I'd gone too far? That didn't feel like winning. That felt like survival. Bitter, hollow survival. The summer heat made the workshop unbearable by afternoon. I started working early mornings and late evenings, avoiding the middle of the day, took walks in the woods behind my property, following trails I'd neglected for months. The solitude was good, gave me time to think without distractions. And thinking led to uncomfortable conclusions. I'd won the legal battle, destroyed Walsh Consulting, held my kids accountable for their betrayal, but in the process, I'd become exactly what I'd accused them of being. Someone who prioritized winning over relationships. Someone who destroyed rather than rebuilt. Someone who confused consequences with revenge. The distinction mattered. Consequences taught lessons. Revenge just hurt. What I'd done was revenge dressed up in legal legitimacy, and it had cost me everything except my patents and my pride. A letter arrived in July. Mia's handwriting this time more precise than Jason's, architectural in its perfection. I burned it without reading it. Couldn't face more apologies, more explanations, more reminders of what I'd done. But the envelope sat in the wood stove for an hour before I lit the match. And even after it burned, I wondered what it had said. August brought a commission that changed something. An older woman, maybe 70, wanted a custom rocking chair for her daughter's pregnancy. She came to the workshop, explained exactly what she wanted, trusted me completely to design it. "You'll make it right," she said. "I can tell. You care about the details." Working on that rocking chair felt different than other projects. Maybe because it wasn't just furniture. It was a gift, a legacy, something that would hold her grandchild. Maybe because she trusted me with something important. Or maybe because it reminded me what I used to build, things that connected people, that strengthened relationships, that created bonds instead of destroying them. I finished the chair in early September, delivered it personally, watched the woman's face light up when she saw it. She ran her hands over the curves, tested the motion, smiled with genuine joy. "Perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect. My daughter will love it." Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not quite happiness, but maybe satisfaction. The real kind, not the cold satisfaction of watching enemies fall. The kind that came from building something good. Back in the workshop, I looked around at the organized tools, the precise measurements, the careful order I'd maintained through everything. All this precision, all this organization, all this control. And for what? I'd built a perfect fortress and trapped myself inside it. My phone rang. Lila. "Henry, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Okay." "Are you happy?" I thought about that, about the workshop, about the projects, about the licensing deal with Meridian, about my children working warehouse jobs and retail management, about burning letters without reading them. "No," I said. "Good." "Good?" "Good that you can admit it. Because, Henry, you're the most successful, miserable person I've ever met. You've got everything you fought for, and you're living like a hermit in a workshop. Something's got to change." "What do you suggest?" "I suggest you figure out what you actually want. Not what you think you deserve. Not what you think justice requires. What you actually, genuinely want for the rest of your life." "I want—" I stopped. What did I want? Exactly. You don't know. Because you've been so focused on revenge that you forgot to plan for what comes after. She was right. I'd orchestrated an entire campaign of destruction, but never thought about what I'd do once it was complete. Never planned for peace, only war. And now the war was over, and I had nothing but an empty workshop and burned bridges. "Talk to them," Lila said quietly. "Not to reconcile, not to apologize, just to talk, to see if there's anything left worth salvaging. There isn't. You don't know that. You've been assuming they're the same people who betrayed you. But they've lost everything, faced consequences, lived with what they did. People change when they hit bottom. Or they just become better at hiding who they really are. Maybe. But don't you want to know which one it is? After she hung up, I sat in the workshop as September evening fell. The temperature was perfect, not too hot, not too cold. The kind of evening I used to enjoy before everything went wrong. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Jason's last message from February, the unanswered, "Please, just talk to me." My thumb hovered over the reply button. What would I even say? Sorry I destroyed your life? That would be a lie. I wasn't sorry about the consequences. They'd earned them. But was I sorry about the totality of it? About the complete annihilation, the scorched earth, the nuclear option? Maybe. A little. More than a little. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I didn't delete the message either. That was progress. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but progress. September turned to October. The leaves changed color, painting my property in reds and golds. I worked on commissions, took walks, thought about Lila's question. What did I want? I wanted my work recognized. Check. Meridian was expanding. Licensing was succeeding. I wanted the people who betrayed me held accountable. Check. Walsh Consulting gone. Careers destroyed. I wanted respect. Check. Industry recognition. Successful system implementation. Validation of my methods. But did I want forgiveness? Reconciliation? Some kind of relationship with my children? I didn't know. The question kept me up at night, pulled me out of sleep at 3 a.m., haunted me during quiet moments in the workshop. Maybe I didn't need to know yet. Maybe it was enough just to ask the question. Or maybe I was just avoiding the answer because it scared me.